to like just before I get started, and I would love to know who's on the call right now. I know some people are going to wait and watch this later when it's recorded, but just for the people who are here, would you put in the chat just kind of I don't like to say title because that may or may not be relevant, but I would love to know if you're actively in job search or quietly in job search. Either way, if you're looking for a new opportunity some way, somehow, and kind of what level are you? Are you early career, mid career, late career, whatever it is for you? I'm just kind of curious because the things I'm going to be sharing, I want to make sure I'm addressing the needs of the audience that is here. So I'd love to see some of that in the chat before we get started. Anyone? There we go. Okay, great. Lisa, have we met? I don't know if you guys know this. I used to live in Seattle. So I was in Seattle for about 13 years. So I know a lot of folks from
Uh,
the PRSA chapter. I was very active there.
Not me. I actually just moved to town.
Ah, well, welcome to Seattle.
Thank you.
Oh, that government, ooh, that's a tough one. Okay, good. We've got a lot of mid-career folks. All right. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and kind of looking great currently with state government. State's a little bit safer right now. Chief Communications, all right. Good. Wow, we've got a nice mix of people. Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it. Okay, I am going to share my screen and then I got to do that little thing where we where I swap the things so that you can uh, there we go. And now it's not letting me swap my screen. There we go. All right. So are you guys seeing just the slides? Eric, you can nod because I can see you.
Just the slides.
All right, cool. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about ways to rethink your career. Because I think that when someone's in job search, we kind of go to the tried and true methods, looking on job boards. And I want to talk about some things you can do that will be more effective and helpful. I'm going to throw out a bunch of statistics, and some of these statistics, I'm going to admit, are a little depressing, but I'm doing it for a reason. I want you to see some of these statistics so you kind of understand why you got to get beyond the job boards. So some of these are just interesting though. So like this one, right now, 40% of roles are hybrid or remote. I'm not saying that that's communications roles because I couldn't get anything that specific, but I thought 40%, I was pretty surprised. But only 1% of companies are fully remote. On the recruiting side of my business, which right now I'm focusing more on the coaching, but recruiting side of my business, I can tell you most people want hybrid or remote, and even some people are only looking for remote. You can see that that really limits your opportunities. I thought this was just kind of a funny statistic. 38% report being ghosted by employers during the hiring process. I think anybody in job search can probably relate to that one. And I thought this was an interesting statistics. 10.5% turnover rate for CCOs in 2024, and that's up from 2023. Why am I sharing this with you guys? Well, because one reason that people often decide to leave a job is because of leadership changes. People don't like change, but it's inevitable, right? The person at the top may turn over. In fact, in 2024, it was a 10% chance your boss was gonna, your CCO or your head of comms is gonna turn over. And it's okay. And I just want to tell you that so that you know that it's very common. When there's leadership changes, often the CCO is one of them. And so it's an opportunity for resilience, if you will. But now I want to talk about more about the job search specific. I thought this was an interesting statistic. The average number of days to fill a position for a company from the time they say, okay, we're going to start this recruiting effort to the time they actually have an offer accepted is 41 days. That's a good number to know for you for expectations because so often we want the process to go quickly. But the reality is sometimes it takes over a month. And that's just a helpful reality check. And the other reality check is 5 months is the average number of months to land a new job if you're not working. So those are two kind of sobering statistics, but important because this first section, we're going to talk about rethinking your time. And if you know that that's sort of the average, this is a good way to sort of frame the stuff I'm going to tell you now. So I have two things. First, I want to talk about the dartboard. So I like to do a dartboard analogy kind of about who is attracted to you as a candidate, right? So the bullseye of a dartboard is the role that you've been in, like this a similar level, industry, team size, type of all of that kind of stuff. That's the bullseye. When companies are like when they post a job, that internal recruiters scouring resumes and they're looking for somebody who looks exactly like the job that they're trying to fill. That's the bullseye. Chances are you're not going to be that person. You're probably not going to be leaving a job that's exactly like the job you're applying for. It happens, but not always. So then you're looking at the rings that go outside of that bullseye. So you want to be looking at things that are sort of peripheral to the bullseye. And the closer you are to the center, the more attractive you are going to be to that hiring leader or to that recruiter screening your resume. And so that's one way to think about it. But know that you don't have to only apply for jobs that are in the bullseye. My point in telling this story is when you're thinking about how you're using your time, know that that stuff that's closer to the exact experience you have is going to be a little bit easier for companies, recruiters, hiring managers to identify you as a good candidate. But the further out you are, there's opportunities still. You're just going to probably have to do more than just apply online. You're going to need someone to maybe vouch for you to talk about how it's really great, or your cover letter or the conversation you have is going to be more about how what you have done is relevant to this new role and connecting those dots for someone because not everybody connects them as well as you're going to be able to as you're describing your background as it pertains to this new opportunity. So I'm going to say if you were like a communications professional working for, I'm going to say, let's say you're working for a private school as a comms director and you apply for a PR product person for a consumer technology company. That's pretty much at the outside of the dartboard. It's going to be harder for that, like, let's say a Logitech to say, oh, I see your relevant experience being a communicator for a private school, a small private school. It's a whole different ball game, right? So that's what I mean by you want to get as close to the center as possible. Think about peripheral industries. If you're working in a highly regulated industry, what other industries are highly regulated? Those are the things that are going to get you closer to the center of the dartboard. So here's a couple of pie charts because I want to see if I can see the chat because I would love to know how you're spending your time on job boards. Typically, when I'm talking to people, I wonder if I can see the chat here. My mouse isn't working right, so I have to go this way. Um, Typically, when I'm talking to people, if they spend most of their time on the job boards. And so if that is the situation for you guys, I would Eric, would you like share with me what people are putting in the chat because I can't see it. Tell me everybody, how do you think this is kind of accurate how you're looking at your job search that you're spending the majority of your time on job boards and a little bit of time networking and what's other? Who knows?
Let's see. John has just
Um,
started searching. Yeah, that's just right about for me. Yes, accurate. And about 50-50 jobs boards and networking right now. Yep, pretty much accurate. Mostly jobs boards. Seems like that's 50-50 or mostly jobs boards. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, I figured out the chat so I can see them now too. That's really helpful. All right, so this is part of the rethinking your time because this is totally normal. It's low-hanging fruit. They need a job or they need to hire somebody. I need a job. Let's go match, right? The reality is this is really how you should be spending your time. Wait, why isn't it going? There we go. There. This is how I think you should be spending your time. At least 65% of your time should be spent networking. And we're going to talk a lot about that in a minute. 15% of time on research and preparation. Because whenever you do get a hit for somebody that's interested, you really want to research that company. You really want to be prepared for that interview. But only about 20% of your time on job boards. So when you're thinking about your time, the reason that I'm saying this is the allocation you should have is because when you look at the results of job search, only about 30% of jobs are actually filled because you replied to an advertisement online. Only 30% are filled that way. More than half, they say up to 70% of jobs are filled because of someone who refers you in. And that can be someone you know, it can be internal referral, it could be someone who just introduced you because you're in PRSA and somebody else in PRSA said, oh man, I really like this person, you should talk to them. It's just getting your resume on the top of the pile, because the conversations you have are going to be the thing that changes the trajectory of your search. I'm going to invite you to consider that it changes the trajectory of your career, maintaining your network, but we'll talk about that later. So when you think about allocating your time, you want to be sure to be spending more time like scheduling conversations and then also having conversations with people that are going to result in result in interviews and hopefully landing in a job that you want. Okay. All right. So how can you do that? Let's talk about action steps you can take right now. Since we're going with 3 different things, I'm going kind of fast. So many of the things I'm talking about today, I have like whole hour sessions on each topic, but so we're going to kind of hit the highlights for today. So the first thing that you should do when you think about rethinking your time is create a plan and then work that plan. If you kind of treat your job search like a project, you're going to be way more successful and productive. Most people spend 10 to 20 hours per week if they're doing a productive search, right? Well, I think 20 is a lot. I think 10 is a minimum. And so when you think about your time, kind of allocate. Maybe every morning you spend a half an hour looking at postings, maybe applying to 1 or 2, who knows, right? Then you're maybe spending an hour reaching out to people. Maybe you're spending a couple hours a week, more than that, actually talking to people. It could be interviews, but it could also be networking conversations. So when you think about it, allocate your time, 20% looking at job boards, 65% dedicated to that network. That's reaching out to them, scheduling time, and then actually having the conversations and following up. And then 15% research and prep. Okay, when we talk about researching organizations and people, not just open roles, I think this is so important. I was talking with, I have a coaching client that I'm working with right now, and she's really doing great things. She's got some great connections. People are like really offering to be supportive and helpful. And she had someone who said, oh, here's this person, he's the CEO of an agency, just like, where you worked before, and he's willing to talk to you. And she was like, well, I looked online and they don't have any jobs posted, so I don't really know what I'm going to talk to them about. Wait a minute. That's CEOs, leaders, hiring managers. They're always recruiting. They're always looking for good people. And maybe they don't have an open role right now. But if they're willing to have a conversation with you, there's a reason, because they always want to know when good people are out there. And maybe they know about something that's coming up in a couple of months. Maybe they can move up that timeline. Maybe they have a colleague, someone in their network who's looking for someone like you that they can refer you. Maybe your conversation unveils a problem they've been trying to solve and didn't know how to solve it, and you're the person who can solve it. It's really important to be really open-minded when you're researching organizations and people, not just open roles. Who are those target companies that you'd like to work for? That's a great way to think about spending your networking time, which we're going to be talking about more in a minute. Okay, and then track all of your activities, like kind of pay attention to how much time you're spending each week, because I'm a really big believer in communications. You do this all the time, right? When you're doing a communication strategy, when you have a comms plan for something, you look at what's working and what's not working, and you adjust accordingly. Do the same thing with your job search. What's working? How is that getting you some results? Results are not just the job lead. Results are strengthening your network that's leading to potential job leads down the road. Okay. And then I think this is really important. Enjoy your non-work, non-search time while you have it. You've been spending 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week working. And maybe if you're unemployed right now, you have this big gap of time. Oftentimes, when you are, especially unexpectedly in job search, you're so stressed out, you can't enjoy this time. It's like, I've just got to get a new job. I can't do anything else. I've got to get a new job. But if you make a plan and you say, okay, I'm going to spend 15 hours a week doing job search stuff and you're tracking it, maybe this is a great time to sort of treat it almost sabbatical like. What was that project that you didn't have time for? What about your kids' sports teams that you haven't had time to go to those games or whatever? This is a wonderful time to enjoy a little time while you have it. It's not ideal, but take advantage of your non-work time and your non-search time while you can. Because soon enough, when you land in that job, you're going to be back at it. Okay, this is one of those sobering statistics. 75% of resumes submitted through a job postings never reach a hiring manager. Why is that? Well, it's a lot of reasons, but some of it's technology. The applicant tracking systems have AI built into them where they're trying to match the job and the resume. So this is another reason to be thinking about your network, because if it's not getting through just through the ATS, the applicant tracking system, how else can you get your resume to the right person? But here's another statistic. 70% of jobs are never posted. So what does that mean, and why would they not be posted? A few reasons. Companies often promote from within. So of course those jobs are never posted. Sometimes they have confidential searches, like someone's going to, maybe isn't performing well, they're going to lose their position and they need to backfill that position as quickly as possible. So maybe they do some quiet searching prior to losing the other person in the role. Or maybe it's a sensitive position that they don't want the public to know that this position is open. I've actually had some speechwriter roles where they were confidential because they just don't want to talk about the fact that the CEO has a speechwriter. It seems kind of weird, but it happens all the time. So 70% of jobs are never posted. This really kind of plays to why networking matters so much. And then, of course, you're 4 times more likely to be hired if you're a referred person. So all of those statistics really support the reason why you should rethink your network. So when you think about the word networking, I'd love to have you, and I can see the chat now, Eric. So I'd love to hear from you kind of what word describes how you feel about networking? Just one word, couple words, whatever. Go ahead and throw them in the chat. Daunting. Yeah, I think that's good. Oh, good. Relationships. Good job, Eric. Making in-person contact for sure, not just a little thumbs up on LinkedIn. Energizing and rewarding, but tedious at times. Very good description, Cassidy. I think that's really true. Well, one of the things, I mean, I hate the word networking too. And if I could change it, if I could change the way we talk about networking, I would just call it conversations with people you like, right? You really, and I'm a big believer in this is all about strengthening relationships you already have. And because of the strength of those relationships, those individuals are introducing you to additional people, and then you can begin strengthening new relationships. I do not think of networking as cold calls. I don't think just reaching out on LinkedIn to people who you've never met before, who have no interest in helping you, is necessarily going to be the most productive use of your time. There are times when a cold message is effective, but I don't think it's the place to start. So I want to really look at things you can do right now to help you with your networking. Okay, so first, start with who you know. When I think about your network, and anybody who's ever heard me speak, I talk about this all the time. I talk about it in my book. You have 3 categories of people in your network: champions, allies, and acquaintances. Champions are those people who are in your court, They are people who are going to advocate for you, whether you ask them to or not. They're always there. They're there for you. They support you. If you said, "Oh my gosh, I just lost my job," they're going to be the first one saying, "How can I help you?" Right? Most of us only have a handful of champions. These are people, maybe former bosses, mentors, longtime family friends who hold prominent positions in the corporate world, whatever the case may be. Most of us only have a handful of champions. These are people you want to always keep those relationships strong. Allies are people who, my bar is always, this is somebody I like, and if they called me, I'd help them. And if I called them, they'd help me. They're people former colleagues, current colleagues, people in PRSA that every time you have a meeting, you always make sure you go over and chat with them. Someone who you have coffee with at least a few times a year. Think about allies. They're people you like, respect, and would help each other if you could. Acquaintances are those people like, oh, you were at a PRSA conference last year and you sat next to them at that lunch and you really liked them and you connected on LinkedIn. That's the last time you talked to them, or almost the last time, right? Those are your acquaintances. These are all people who are potential networking contacts. But when you're thinking about good use of time, effective for your job search, you want to always start with your champions and allies, because these are people who are more likely to help you. When you think of that, so when you start, I would actually create a list, right? And block them out. Who's who, right? And your allies, you're going to have quite a few of. So it's going to take a little time to get through them all. Acquaintances, you might have a few that you can move into the ally category with a little bit of effort, but start with the champions and allies. Set an outreach goal. If you're actively in search and you aren't holding a job, I think you could make this a 5, an outreach goal of 5 a day, but I think 3 is less daunting. So when you think 3 by 3, reach out to 3 people every day. And when I say reach out, what do I mean by that? I mean a real message to them. It's not just a thumbs up on LinkedIn. It's not just a hey, but it's actually connecting to that person like, hey, John, somebody right? Um, we haven't talked in a long time. Would love to catch up. Or, congratulations on your promotion. Would love to hear more about your new opportunity. It doesn't have to be, hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you know of a job? Because that tends not to be as effective. Because if they don't know of a job, the conversation's over. So think about people that you can reach out to and create a way to have a conversation, not just about your job search, but because you actually know them, like them, and want to have a conversation with them about a lot of things. Try and have 3 conversations a week. If you're reaching out to 3 people a day, anybody getting back to you, it's going to take a week or so to get something scheduled, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks to get something scheduled. So soon enough, you'll be having conversations every week, right? And then the goal of those conversations is to get 3 interviews a month, hopefully, or high priority live networking meetings. What do I mean by high priority? Like, these are people who matter in your network that you are willing to have a conversation with you. And if you can meet in person, great. If it has to be by Zoom, that's okay too, right? But it's an intentional meeting where you're having a good conversation. That is a good target that will decrease your search by several weeks if you're able to really focus on these goals. Okay. And then this is just a little reminder. Remember to maintain contact with people after your search is over, just because you like and value them. So often, I can tell you the number one thing people say to me when they find themselves in the unfortunate situation of, a downsizing, restructuring, whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't really paid attention to my network in a couple of years or 5 years or whatever. If the only time you're reaching out to people is when you need them, that's not as good. If you have a really steady flow of staying in touch with people, being a resource for people, even if it's just that commenting, supporting, all of those things that make being intentional about keeping your relationship strong within your champions and allies, when you do need them, they will be there. You never want to be that person that only reaches out when you need something. It's okay if that's who you've been so far, because I really believe people want to help each other, and we all know we could end up in the situation where we're looking for a job. So what goes around comes around. So I think people are still going to rally for you. Also, use this as an opportunity to just like, after you land again, every Friday, spend 1 hour just making concerted effort to reach out, pick, 3 people a week that you just reach out to forever and ever. It's really good for your career long term. Okay, more things you can think about in your networking. This one's, I think, the most interesting thing. Focus on the activity versus the result. What I mean by that, obviously, is conversations, being a resource, building relationships, not just looking for a job lead. Almost everybody goes into networking conversations when they're in job search, hoping that the result of the call or the conversation is going to be a job lead or an interview or a job, totally just a job, right? And I've had so many of my coaching clients come to me and say, well, this networking thing isn't working out because I haven't gotten a job. Well, is that true that it isn't working out? Because what you're doing is focusing on the relationship. And not all jobs are on demand. It's not like I need a job. You got a job? They're not on demand. But when you have good conversations where you're sharing ideas about how AI is changing internal communications or whatever the situation might be, and you're seen as a brainstorming partner, a knowledgeable person in your field, someone who gave them good advice, right? All of those kinds of things. When the job does come up, they're more likely to think about you first, and that's the goal. So the activity should be the goal versus the result. When I was starting recruiting, my boss would always say, like, oh, I don't have a job search. I don't have any searches yet, right? Like, and she'd say, activity begets activity begets activity, which gets results. And it's hard to keep that in mind when you're in the thick of it, but I think it's good advice. Okay, get your story straight. What do I mean by that? How do you answer the question, what do you do? I have a whole spiel on this, but I'm just going to tell you really quick. When you're thinking about how you talk about who you are, be interesting. Don't sound like a scripted, jargon-filled head of your resume, right? Think about who you are today. What marks the spot? When you're talking about who you are today, it's not, I have 10 years experience as a communications leader. Like anybody with 10 years experience could plug and play that into theirs. Who are you? I always like to think about the question, um, I'm the one you call when. What result do you bring when somebody has you on their team? What can they expect, right? So think of a nice, powerful, compelling statement like, I do X. I help build internal communications teams that get employees excited about working in this organization. Use like normal human language rather than resume speak. And then clarify that, right? So I always think about it as here's who I am and what I do, like the result I get. Here's a little context of how I got there, right? Like, here's who I am, what I do. I've been working in this type of organization for the last 10 years where I've been able to lead teams of up to 12 people, right? So think about it's like a 3 sentence opening thing. Be compelling, interesting, use tone of voice, sound like you love what you do. Because by the way, if you sound like you love what you do, people assume you're good at it because nobody loves what they do if they're terrible at it. So just use language that your enthusiasm comes through authentically, of course. You don't want to sound, fake and any of that. Okay. And then what's your ask? This is really interesting because you want to go right to the heart of it. I'm looking for a job. And yes, you're going to be talking about the fact that you're looking for a job. Of course, it's no secret. But come from a place of curiosity. Go into every conversation from a place of curiosity, not just pitching yourself. Be interested in what's happening in their world. I always like to have networking conversations. I always start every conversation with what's going on in your world. Because let them talk a little bit about what's happening in their world. And as you're listening to that person, think about who do I know and what do I know that might be helpful to them. And then when it's your turn, you can say, well, let me tell you what's going on in my world. I'm with a federal employee and I lost my position and here's what I'm kind of doing and here's how I would love to ask for your help. Give me some advice on how I'm telling my story. Give me some advice on here's some of the companies I'm really interested in. What do you know about these companies? Who do you know at these companies? Like what other companies should I be thinking about? Like really be thinking about the advice they can give you. I had a friend who was in the fundraising world, and she said, um, when she first started in fundraising, her boss told her, if you want somebody to give you money, ask for advice. If you want someone to give you advice, ask for money. And I think the same thing is true in job search, right? If you want somebody to give you a job, ask them for some advice. Ask good questions. Be curious about them. And then they're more likely to connect the dots and then start thinking about who they can introduce you to. The other thing that I was thinking about coming from a place of curiosity, I was just watching some interview with someone the other day, and she said, people who are the most like, people who are the most liked are people who like the most people. And what I mean by that is when you're the kind of person who just likes them, who's always looking for the good in people who like people, those are the ones who are the most liked. So that's why when you're coming in from a place of curiosity, when I want to know about you, you're more likely to want to know about me. Okay. All right. And then always ask, who else do you know? Because, and there's a few ways to do that. You can say, after a great networking conversation with somebody, you can say, now that you've kind of brought this to my attention, who are two people that you think I should know? Or, who do you know anyone in these companies? Would you be willing to do an introduction? And always offer to give them a paragraph to help make that introduction so that they don't have to do as much work, right? Plus, you want to be the one to position yourself. You want to be the one to say who you are and what you're going to ask for from that other person. Because I know there's always hesitancy to introduce someone to someone else if it's tied directly to, like, oh, is my reputation on the line for this? I don't know if she's going to be great in that role. I don't know. So you always want to say, here's who I am, and here's what I'm looking for, so that that person can take that paragraph, maybe edit it, tweak it a little bit, or just forward as is. Make it easy for them to help you. And then, of course, follow up. And I know everyone on this call knows to write a thank you note. But updates matter too. So when someone introduces you to somebody, not only should you thank them for the conversation you had, but then when they introduce you to someone else, it could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks before you actually have a conversation with that person they introduced you to. Once you've had that conversation, go back to the person who introduced you and say, "Oh, Eric, thanks so much for introducing me to Sue. We had a great conversation. I so appreciate that you made that introduction." Now, Eric feels great that he made the introduction. He feels good that he was able to help you, and he's more likely to do it again. All right, statistics. With all this AI stuff and remote hiring, so people from all over the country are applying for certain jobs, there's been an increase of 182% of applications per hire from 2021 to 2024. That's pretty significant. Also, 93% of talent acquisition leaders are planning on tech investments in 2025. Guess what those investments primarily include? AI. But good news, there's a 50% improved response rate when you tailor your resume to each job. So with that technology information, we're going to rethink AI and how it relates to your job search. So how many people on this call are using AI to help them in their job search? Go ahead and go in the chat. Give me some info, what you're doing, how you're doing it. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to say, AI is transforming PR practices. So you're doing this already in your professional life. And the good news is most people are thinking that these technologies are actually enhancing things like media monitoring, sentiment and analysis, campaign personalization, and really leading to more effective and efficient communication strategies. The same thing is true for job search and for the recruiting side of it. AI is helping and assisting, but everything that I read from the recruiter side of it is no one thinks that AI is replacing recruiters. It's helping with scheduling. And I admit, I don't like a lot of the AI stuff that's happening, like when they do those stupid, awful robotic interviews on, like you have to speak to a screen and not a person. Hate those. but there are a lot of really good uses for AI. And Janelle, that question is actually coming up in my next slide. So we'll be talking about that. When you say I've heard that AI will weed out resumes prior to forwarding them to hiring officials, that's exactly what I was talking about when I said 75% of resumes never get to the hiring manager because they're being screened out of through from the AI bots. Okay. So think of this as a way to enhance your search. There's a lot of really good things about AI when it comes to your job search. So let's look at sort of some of what that could look like. Here are a few tools to explore, and I'd love to know if you guys have other ones that you recommend or like. But when you're thinking about resume enhancers, Resume Worded, Job Scan, Slay Resume, Resumes Optimizer, there's free pieces of these and there are paid pieces of these. Play around with them, see which ones you like. I'm the most familiar with JobScan. I've always liked that one, but these other ones are also pretty interesting. I thought Resume Worded was really interesting. And they are tools that you can put your resume into, and it can help optimize it with a job description. So you put the job description in and your resume in, and it'll tell you how much of a match you are and might make recommendations on how to change your resume. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of that in a second. There's job matching, job copilot, and TLHQ. I'm not as familiar with these two. I'd love to hear in the chat if any of you are using them and can say great or not great things about them. But these are supposed to be to help you match, right? So yeah, you can go on LinkedIn. Yeah, you can go on Indeed, but how many jobs aren't actually on LinkedIn or Indeed? Because not every company pays for the job posting feature on LinkedIn. It's expensive. And so they might only have it on their website. Who's scanning websites to find those jobs? So job matching, here's my resume, what jobs out there match me, right? And then I just learned about mock interview tools like Boss, and there were several that I found when I was checking them out. I didn't like any of them. Thought Boss was the most interesting. There's like here's a one question freebie, but then if you pay a little bit for like a monthly subscription or a quarterly, you can actually do some AI prompted practice interviews and then give you feedback on your answers. I will tell you in my experience, both as a recruiter and someone who does mock interviews in my coaching, mock interviews are hard because it's not real. That, I mean, by nature, with being mocked, and you don't know exactly what the priority is of that company. But there are absolutely things that you can do to practice your example stories and to practice how you talk about who you are and what you do and those basic questions that are literally asked in almost every interview. Those are things that are great to practice, and this is one way to do it, just to get different feedback. Try it out. I'm not saying they're great tools or bad tools. I'm saying it's a great opportunity um, to at least explore and try the free things. Don't put a lot of money into it until you get more comfortable. And since no one actually added any tools that they use, I'm hoping that this is helpful information to get started out on those things. Oh, one other thing. Wait, before I go back, I'm gonna go back. I also learned in all my little statistics speaking, 65% of employers believe AI generated resumes are contributing to an increase in underqualified candidates. And among those, 3/4 consider this a big issue impacting their recruiting decisions. So when you think about using AI tools for your resume and stuff, you want to really make sure the voice is authentic. Yeah, yeah. John, thanks for sharing that. In our organization, managers get aghast at all the interviews whose qualifications or work ethic don't fit the position. 100%. I mean, the thing about AI, this is what frustrates me too, is like you can make your resume match the job description, but does your experience actually match the job description? Is, is that job is it allowing you to do the things you're really good at and want to do in your next career step? So often we're so focused on just getting interviews and getting a job, but you want to get a job that you want. So when you're doing all this AI stuff, really review it. Review that job. Is this a job I want? And does this resume accurately reflect who I am and the direction I want to go. And if those are a match, that's going to be a better indicator. The other thing is, you guys are communicators, you're writers, and it's AI is obvious, right? You know when something's not written by a person. So keep your voice and good writing at the forefront. Write your resume first and maybe fix it or tweak it a little bit using AI tools. Don't let AI write it for you. Or if you go the opposite way and you let AI start your resume, then you fix it. So it's your voice and your good writing. That is a skill you have as a communicator. It's inherent in you. I know as communicators, we're always great at telling everybody else's story and terrible about telling our own. So that's where AI can kind of help you get over that hump, but use the skills that are already part of your natural talents. Obviously, avoid overstating your experience based on what we just talked about. And there are tricks that people try, and please don't do them. One of them is like where you put a bunch of keywords and then you make it white font so you can't really see it on the resume. Don't do that because they can find it. And you don't want to do that because, again, you might be misrepresenting who you are. If it's not really on your resume, you haven't really done it, you don't want to get pulled up because of the AI bot or whatever, the applicant tracking system. And then tailor your resume whenever possible. So here's a little trick I think is useful with an AI tool, like a resume tool, especially if you've had a lot of experience. I've seen resumes that are 4 and 5, even longer, 4 and 5 pages long, because it has every single accomplishment bullet point. They still need to be really well written, right? But one thing that's possible is you can take your long resume with all of your accomplishments really well planned and thought out, put that into the AI thing with the job description and say, make your prompt about reduce my resume with the most relevant accomplishments, making a 2-page resume. It's going to clean out the bullet points that aren't relevant and help you hone that resume down to be a 2-page resume. So if you keep kind of your monster resume that might be 3 or 4 pages long, and then hone it down to be relevant to the job itself. Because it is important to make sure that the resume you're sending tells the story that the hiring leader or the recruiter screening needs to understand about your background. Most importantly, it needs to be accurate. Okay, so things you can do right now. You got to become a good prompt writer. And I know that there are some tools out there to help you learn how to write a good prompt, but garbage in, garbage out, ask great questions to allow AI to be helpful. And how, besides using it to help you with your resume, don't like doing cover letters, by the way, because it becomes too much like everybody else's cover letter. You should be able to write a compelling cover letter that tells your story and how you are the right for this role, but with a personal touch. I know I'm biased because I only work with communications people, but you have that ability. But I think that AI is really good for researching companies. And also, people use it to brainstorm questions to ask during the interview and to brainstorm ideas of what questions you should ask, but also what questions might they ask. Here's the job description, here's my resume, what questions might the interview process include? And so AI might, give me 10 questions you think I would be asked during this interview. And then I've actually had one client that I was coaching. Um, Janelle, I'll get to that question at the end, okay? So I had a client that was he took I think it was Chat GPT, and he was doing he had a paid profile in Chat GPT, and he actually input his performance reviews, assessments like Strength Finder and Myers-Briggs, and he did some emails of feedback after projects. He put all this stuff into Chat GPT, and he had um, Chat GPT help him with identifying his strengths, areas for development, and all kinds of really interesting things that helped him as he was trying to figure out how he was going to tell his story and which stories he was going to tell when it came to examples of work that he's done and kind of the strengths he wanted to highlight during that storytelling during the interview process. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about is how can you give AI the right information to help that's really tailored to you to help you identify the best stories to tell for yourself. Keep privacy concerns in mind, of course, but I thought that was a really cool and interesting way to use AI. Okay, so 25% improved outcomes when sending an email follow-up post-interview. I know, you know that you need to send a thank you note. I don't know why I'm telling you this, because every now and then people say, well, I'm not going to send a thank you note because it wasn't that big of a deal of an interview. It was only 20 minutes. Send a thank you note. Matters. And email is fine, by the way. Email is totally fine for thank you note because you don't know who's working from home and if they ever get the mail at the office anyway. So email is totally fine. Okay, quick recap. Rethink your time. So align your time so that you're spending the activities you're doing really will help you get the best results beyond just applying online. Rethink your network, really get into those champions and allies, and then start inching into your acquaintances. Know your story so that when you're having conversations, they're super meaningful. And I didn't think I said this when we were talking about that. Even people you know, even people you've worked with, say this to them. I know you know me, but I want to tell you how I'm positioning myself. Let me answer the question, what do I do? What do you do? Or tell me a little bit about you so that you can hear how I'm positioning myself. I'd love your feedback. Why do you want to do that? Because they know you in the context that they know you. Maybe they worked with you 5 years ago. Imagine how much you've grown since then. Maybe they work with you on a project, but they don't know that you do all these other things. And by the way, those other things are the direction you want your career to go. So by positioning yourself to people even who know you, you're reminding them who you are, but from the perspective of who you want people to know who you are and the direction you want to go. Because people will make their own assumptions and you don't want them to make assumptions. They want to help them help you by giving them the right information. No one will be mad at you for saying, let me tell you who I am. Like, let me practice on you. And then they don't think that, you're being weird, introducing yourself, right? Okay, sorry, little diversion there. And then rethink AI. Use the tools to help enhance your search. All right, how can I help you do that? Of course, go to daretobedeliberate.com. That's my coaching website. There's some free tools and resources that will really support your search and managing your career with tension. It's not all about job search. It's also about managing your career with intention. I have a job search success team, and that is a team of up to 10 people. I try to keep people at peer level, and it's a structured call that kind of helps you land more quickly. We do a topic every week on job search, something related to job search to help in your search. Everybody on the call has an accountability moment where they talk about what they accomplished that week, wins of the week, and then we have an open Q&A forum for the group to ask questions and share information with each other. And then also there's individual coaching. And for anyone on this call or who watches this webinar, PRSA members, Eric's going to make sure you receive a coupon code. Right? If there's any programs that you're interested in, I'm open to have a conversation with you and give you 10% discount on whatever. It could be one session, it could be a package, it doesn't matter, but for being here, you get a discount. And then of course, connect with me, and I'm going to unshare the screen so that I can answer any of your questions.
While we're waiting to see if there's any questions, I can tell you that there are at least 2 people in this call, myself included, who some time ago participated in one of Angee's job search success teams. And one of the greatest benefits of that, besides all of the great knowledge of it, was the building of kind of a community of people who are going through a job search with you. It's tough. I applied for, I think, 350 jobs in my search. And having that community of folks to go through and talk through and bounce ideas off of was invaluable. That was the community building part of it, was like what was worth it a lot for me outside of the great information sharing.
Thank you. Oh, Lisa, I'm sorry. What is it that you want me to put back up?
Sorry, just the last slide.
My LinkedIn,
Yes.
Angee Linsey, with Angee with 2 E's, Linsey with no D. Sorry.
Okay.
And then Janelle, you had a question about cover letters. Are employees still looking for one in the application package? I'm going to be really honest with you. It depends. I'm going to say for communicators, hiring managers might ask for a cover letter because they read them. Hiring managers want to see that you can write. Thank you, Eric, for that LinkedIn link. So hiring managers want to know that you can write. So cover letters matter in communications roles occasionally. If you're applying on LinkedIn, they don't even have a place for you to add a cover letter. So you don't need one because no one's going to read it. They've made it very clear by not offering it as an option. So my kind of rule of thumb is if you are just applying online to a job and they ask for a cover letter, it better be a good one. If you're applying through LinkedIn and they don't ask for one, don't sweat it. It's not a big deal. If you are using someone, if someone is referring you and making an introduction, you should have a good cover letter, but it might not be a letter like attached. It might just be the body of the email. And so whatever you're saying, as a communicator, the pressure's on because you got to show that you are a good communicator. It can't be the please accept my resume in response to your position posted on LinkedIn. No, it needs to be more interesting. Anybody else have any questions? Take advantage. I'm here. Ask me anything. Eric, do you have any questions for the group?
One thing that I think is I was looking through, and a lot of these folks um, are either mid-senior or senior level positions that are on this call. And I know that the strategies for job search can change because those positions become less open less frequently. And so as folks advance in their career, does the strategy change along the way? Um, what would you recommend is the number one thing that folks in senior level positions can do when if they're beginning a job search?
Yeah. So in a way it changes and in a way it doesn't, right? When you think about kind of the pyramid of job search, right? There's one VP or one CCO. There's maybe a team of 5 specialists or manager level. So there's more jobs available the less senior you are. So of course it's going to be a little bit easier because there's more jobs. But no matter what, your network matters. At the senior levels, your network is imperative. The people that you have worked with and know, they are going to be the ones that really change your career trajectory. In my book, when I interviewed John Onata, he's a CCO. He's semi-retired now, but not quite. But he said it is your job to stay connected to your professional network. It is your job. You need to think of it as a priority in your job because those doors are going to open for you that would otherwise not open for you. That includes promotions from within and opportunities outside that may never get posted or maybe are posted. So when you can think about just staying connected to the people who matter to you, it's worth the time effort that you put into it. So, and then also if you're a CCO, your relationships with recruiting firms matters because so many of those searches are done with outside assistance.
We'll take the couple of questions in the chat if we have time, and then if other folks have questions, I assume it's okay to reach out through LinkedIn or other avenues.
Of course, yeah.
One question is it a disadvantage to want gig work in communications as opposed to a full-time salaried position?
Absolutely not. And in fact, right now, with all the uncertainty in the economy, I think actually gig work, fractional work, contract, consulting is actually kind of picking up a little bit because there's concern that maybe we don't have headcount or we're not willing to invest in headcount right now because we don't know with tariffs and with whatever, turmoil's going on in the financial world. They're like, but hey, we still need to get this work done. And a lot of the communications work still needs to get done. And so when you can say, hey, I can help you solve that problem, It's absolutely there. You got to hustle. You got to get out there. People got to know that you're available and who you are. But 100%, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. It's all about making sure people know that you're out there to help. And then I see, what about changing careers? Great question, Christine, because um, when you're changing careers, it's harder to just apply online because you're not in the bullseye of that dartboard, right? So this is where your network really, really matters. So when you're looking at switching to a communications focus, start talking to people who are peripheral, maybe to the world that you were in before, because you can communicate about the work you were doing before, gives you some expertise, right? But again, find a way to connect the dots to get you closer on the dartboard when you're changing careers, or look into programs that will, I'm not going to say the word apprentice you in, but like people who are like, oh yeah, I don't need that background. I know you're amazing. Again, that often comes from your network. Okay. And how do we best connect with those recruiting networks? Two ways. One, ask people you know what recruiters they've worked with that were good. Not all recruiters are great. And also have appropriate expectations when you're talking to a recruiter. Recruiters are not there to get you a job. Recruiters are there to help a company fill a position with that needle in a haystack candidate. So it's a mind shift, right? So when you're reaching out to a recruiter, you want to find recruiters who are specialists in recruiting, or I mean in communications. And the goal is to get on their radar. I want to be on your radar for these kinds of opportunities. Would love to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about my background and the types of roles I'm looking for. So if you are working on any roles like that, you know to call me. Some recruiters will take those calls and some recruiters will say, thanks very much, not working on anything right now, but if I am, I'll reach out. Right now, I've never been a person that sent those emails, but right now I'm sending those emails because I'm focusing more on my coaching business than the recruiting side. So I'm not going to be your most helpful recruiter. I'm being super honest because I don't have any searches on my plate. But there are lots of recruiters who are very busy and doing that. And so ask others, probably people a little, more senior who kind of had had opportunities to interact with recruiters in the past. But don't worry about if they live in the Puget Sound because recruiters do national searches. I only about 25% of my searches were in Seattle, the rest were everywhere else in the country.
Right.
Okay.
Angee, a genuine thank you for taking time to share this information with us. This is all really valuable stuff that I think I saw in the comments that at least one person really took some things away from this. So I appreciate you sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. It's always a pleasure to get to spend time with you. Um, for everyone who was on this call, we recorded it. We will be putting um, an edited version of this up on to the PRSA YouTube. I say the edited version because we'll take out probably some of the questions at the end, maybe, or and we'll re-add the intro because I forgot to hit record at the same time. But that will be up there. Angee has been generous to offer 10% off to folks who are in this call or registered. So I will send a follow-up email in the following days. Probably won't be today. Honesty, probably not tomorrow either. But in the following days, there will be a follow-up email with a link to this call, to this video, and the coupon code that Angee is willing to share.
All right. Thanks so much, you guys. It was really fun to spend some time with you.
Thank you so much, Angee.
Thanks, you.
Thanks, everyone.